Thousands of investors have bought Turkish property thinking they were getting a cheap second passport, but some of them unknowingly overpaid $80,000 to $150,000 for the exact same apartment. And the reason why comes down to a hidden mechanic inside Turkey's citizenship program. Today, we're breaking down whether Turkey's $400,000 passport actually makes financial sense in 2026, what changed from the earlier era, and the risks most promotional videos leave out. For deeper relocation and second passport breakdowns, the Horizon Society School Group is linked below. But the real question isn't how the program works, it's whether the property you buy for citizenship is actually worth the price you're paying. The 2026 rules are simple on paper. Invest at least $400,000 in Turkish real estate and hold the property for 3 years. There's no residency requirement, meaning you don't need to live in Turkey or spend any specific amount of time in the country during that period. Once approved, citizenship extends to your spouse and children under 18, and processing typically takes 3 to 4 months. Real estate is not the only route. A $500,000 USD bank deposit held for 3 years qualifies. So does purchasing government bonds or making a fixed capital investment of the same threshold. Each route has its own compliance steps. The real estate path gets the most attention because it theoretically combines citizenship acquisition with an asset that has market value. And understanding what happened during the earlier version of this program explains why many investors overpaid for property. During the earlier window of this program, the rules looked very different. What happened during the $250,000 era explains a lot about why the program looks the way it does today, and why assuming it stays at $400,000 indefinitely may be a mistake. From 2018 to June 2022, the minimum real estate investment threshold was $250,000. Before 2018, the number had actually been $1 million, making the program essentially inaccessible for most investors. The drop to $250,000 transformed the program into something with genuine mass market appeal, and the market responded immediately. In 2019 alone, foreign real estate sales in Turkey surged by approximately 92% compared to the prior year. A significant portion of that demand was citizenship-driven. Istanbul neighborhoods that historically moved slowly started seeing concentrated foreign buying. Antalya, Alanya, and coastal markets followed. Developers recognized what was happening and began structuring projects and pricing specifically to target the $250,000 threshold. And this is where the citizenship math started breaking. The problem was predictable. When a government program sets a floor price and developers begin building to that exact floor, artificial pricing pressure enters the market. Properties were being listed and sold at or just above $250,000 in ways that did not reflect genuine market value. Some buyers were purchasing units at inflated prices relative to what comparable local buyers would pay, essentially overpaying for the passport component without fully accounting for it. The Turkish government raised the threshold to $400,000 in May 2022. The stated goal was to attract higher quality investment and reduce speculative distortion. Whether it fully achieved that is debatable, but the pattern established a precedent worth remembering. This is not a secret loophole. It is a deliberate government tool to attract foreign capital, and it gets adjusted when the government decides the calculus has shifted. And that matters if you're thinking about putting $400,000 into this today. Now the real question, is this actually worth it in 2026? The answer depends almost entirely on how the property side of the equation performs, because the passport is a fixed outcome if the process is followed correctly. The property is the variable. To understand whether the numbers actually work, you have to look at the real estate market itself. Istanbul is the most analyzed market. Prime central neighborhoods like Beşiktaş, Şişli, and parts of Kadıköy command significantly higher per square meter prices than outer districts. Qualifying for the $400,000 threshold in a well-located Istanbul property is achievable, but in sought-after areas, it typically means a smaller unit. Gross rental yields in Istanbul's stronger neighborhoods generally range from around 4 to 6% annually, though this varies considerably by district, building type, and management quality. Antalya and coastal markets offer a different profile. Lower per square meter prices mean $400,000 buys more physical space and, in some developments, more than one unit. Gross yields in some Antalya markets have ranged between 5 and 8% in recent years, partially driven by short-term rental demand from European tourists. But liquidity in those markets is thinner. Selling a coastal apartment in a smaller Turkish city after 3 years to a qualified buyer at a price that preserves capital is not guaranteed. Then there is the Turkish lira. Property must be purchased in USD equivalent per program rules, and valuations for conformity purposes are denominated accordingly. But rental income, if collected in lira, erodes in real dollar terms as the currency continues its long-term depreciation trend. An investor collecting lira rents while holding a dollar-valued asset faces a structural mismatch that requires active management or hedging, neither of which is free. The exit strategy after the 3-year hold is where many buyers have not done sufficient planning. The pool of buyers who can or will pay $400,000 or more for Turkish real estate in USD terms is meaningful but not deep outside of certain Istanbul submarkets. Selling at or above acquisition price in year 3 is possible, but not guaranteed. Asset-backed does not mean risk-free. The asset has to actually trade at price. Would this be worth $400,000 to you? Because depending on your passport, the answer could be completely different. The Turkish passport currently provides visa-free or visa-on-arrival access to approximately 110 or more countries. That is a real number with real utility, but the context matters. Turkey does not have visa-free access to the United States, Canada, or the Schengen area. This means that for investors from North America, Western Europe, or countries with similarly strong passports, the Turkish passport does not expand travel optionality in a meaningful direction. It does not open doors that were previously closed for those holders. For investors from countries with weaker passport rankings, including parts of the Middle East, South Asia, Central Asia, and Africa, the Turkish passport can represent a genuine upgrade. Access to countries in Latin America, parts of Southeast Asia, and others becomes visa-free, and the overall mobility profile improves. For those holders, the passport has direct practical travel value. But even for holders from stronger passport countries, the appeal is not necessarily about traveling, it is about optionality. A second citizenship means a second set of rights, a second place where legal residency is accessible, a second base in case political or economic conditions in the home country deteriorate. Turkey is a G20 economy with a functioning legal system, international airports, established banking infrastructure, and a real estate market that participates in global capital flows. The citizenship is a real asset in the diversification sense, not just a travel document. Most people evaluating this program for travel power are asking the wrong question. The deeper question is whether having Turkish citizenship in 10 or 20 years serves a strategic purpose that the applicant cannot fully predict today. That reframe changes how the cost-benefit analysis looks, and this is where things get uncomfortable for a lot of citizenship sales companies. Now, the section that most promotional content skips entirely. The risks that are not speculative, but structural. Because once the passport is approved, the real question becomes whether the investment itself still makes sense. Regulatory change is the most established risk because it has already happened twice. The program moved from $1 million to $250,000 and then to $400,000. There is no regulatory or legal barrier preventing Turkey from raising the threshold again, adding residency requirements, restricting eligible property types, or tightening the list of qualifying nationalities. Applicants from certain countries, including the United States and Canada, have historically faced additional scrutiny or processing complications that are not advertised in program materials. Political risk in Turkey is not theoretical. The country has experienced significant institutional volatility over the past decade, including attempted coups, emergency governance periods, central bank leadership changes driven by political pressure rather than economic rationale, and ongoing tension between democratic norms and executive power concentration. None of this means the citizenship becomes worthless overnight, but it means the political environment is a variable, not a constant. Currency exposure exists even for buyers who believe they are transacting in USD. If rental income is in lira, if local service providers and property managers are paid in lira, and if the eventual buyer pool includes local Turkish buyers limited by their own purchasing power, then lira dynamics affect the real return even when the headline transaction is dollar denominated. Overvaluation is a structural concern in specific market segments. The citizenship premium, the portion of a property's price that exceeds its genuine market value because it meets program thresholds, is real. Some developers have built that premium explicitly into pricing. A buyer who acquires a unit that is priced at $410,000 because it qualifies for citizenship, but would trade at $320,000 in a purely local market, has effectively paid $90,000 for the passport hidden inside the property transaction. Understanding whether any given property is priced at market or priced above market because of citizenship demand requires independent appraisal, not reliance on developer materials. In other words, the buyer didn't just purchase property, they effectively paid tens of thousands of dollars for the passport hidden inside the price. Future rule tightening is the risk that has the longest tail. Even after citizenship is granted, changes to how Turkish citizens are treated internationally, changes to bilateral agreements, or changes to the program structure for future applicants can affect the value of what was purchased. Citizenship is permanent. Property markets are not. The permanent element only remains valuable if the underlying geopolitical and institutional environment around Turkish citizenship remains stable or improves. None of these risks make the program a bad option categorically. They make it a high due diligence option, which is a meaningfully different classification than the way it tends to be marketed. So who does this program actually suit in 2026? The clearest fit is an investor who already has genuine interest in Turkish real estate as an asset class, not just as a citizenship vehicle. Someone who would consider buying property in Istanbul or Antalya based on yield expectations, diversification away from their home country's real estate, or long-term residency optionality in a Southern European adjacent market. For that person, the citizenship is an embedded benefit that comes with the investment rather than an overriding justification for making a property decision that would otherwise fail the investment test. It also suits investors from countries with genuinely weak passport power who are seeking a lower-cost, faster alternative to programs in Europe or the Caribbean. Turkey's timeline of 3 to 4 months is faster than most programs at comparable or higher investment levels. The Caribbean CBI programs offer stronger passport power to Schengen and UK destinations, but Turkey's program offers a larger, more developed country with a real domestic economy rather than a small island jurisdiction. Investors who need to keep $400,000 liquid, who are sensitive to currency risk, who require a strong exit market in 3 years, or who are primarily motivated by Schengen or US visa-free travel are not well matched with this program. The math does not support it as a pure passport purchase when the underlying asset carries significant uncertainty. The conclusion here is not that Turkey's citizenship by investment program is good or bad. It is that the program is specific in what it delivers, specific in what it does not deliver, and specific in who it genuinely serves. Treating it as a universal hack for global mobility misreads both the passport value and the property risk. Treating it as a tool for capital diversification into an emerging market real estate position with a citizenship benefit embedded is a more honest framing. The $400,000 threshold is real, the 3-year hold is real. The 3 to 4 month processing timeline is achievable but not guaranteed. The passport grants meaningful mobility in certain corridors and does not in others. The property may appreciate, may hold value, or may not, depending on location, market conditions, and how well the acquisition was structured. These are all knowable variables before committing capital. Doing that work before purchase is the difference between a structured investment decision and an expensive mistake driven by promotional content. If you're researching second passports, relocation strategies, or international property markets, I break down programs inside the Horizon Society community. That includes detailed comparisons between Turkey, Caribbean citizenship programs, and emerging residency options in Europe and Asia. If you want deeper analysis before committing 6 figures to a program like this, you can find everything linked in the description.